Welcome back, guys, to another Mary Truth Talks. Thank you guys for supporting, thank you for watching, thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. I greatly appreciate it. If you like my content, subscribe, like, and share. Now let's begin. So, I've been doing a lot of digging, and if you follow Mary_Truths, that's my Instagram account, I have become very vocal about the open border and the drug abuse that's been going on and has been worsening over decades. So, last episode, I talked about what's going on with the border and why that should be something that's important to focus on. I gave my opinion on the policies of Obama, Trump, and Biden, and how that has made significant differences for the better and for the worse, depending on what administration we're talking about. But because we are now in Biden's administration, we obviously are aware of what's going on the border. However, there are other things that link to this subject, and that is drug abuse and drug addiction. This stems from 3 centuries ago, at least from what I was able to figure out. What I've been able to dig is since the 19th century. I'm going to give a little bit of history from what I was able to cultivate, what I can understand, and I'm going to give, of course, my opinion on all of this. By no means is this channel a historical, or I'm not a historian. I'm just a American who's curious and self-aware and wants to know what is going on in reality. This is what this channel is all about. It's about just speaking up about what is going on and seeing what might have caused it and what can we do to change it for the better, of course. That is always the goal, is to change things for the better. Since the 19th century, or better said, in the 19th century, cocaine and opium was legal. You can buy it off the counter, and it was perfectly fine. However, things changed. During the 20th century, we started seeing abuses of opium and cocaine. So they actually made it a federal act to restrict it, to regulate it, and to control who can make legal money off of it. Very important. This act was called the Harrison Narcotic Act of 1914. Remember that year, because it's going to be important. So, in this act, cocaine and opium can only be sold legally, and there was a tax for every product that had opium or cocaine. Okay? You're with me? Stay with me. It's gonna get a little more complex. Alright. 1914. World War I begins. In July 28th of 1914 up to November 11th of 1918. Okay? So, in the beginning of a war, what do we need? Drugs, right? So What was the most popular drug that was used in World War I? Morphine. And what ingredient is needed to make morphine? Opium. Yeah, it gets better. Cocaine was also used to keep soldiers alert, to try to keep them from not staying asleep, and it gives you a sense of heroism. I'm assuming, I've been told, I've never done any of these drugs, never will, but that's what I've read. At the same time that the American government is regulating cocaine and opium, it is heavily used because of World War I. So it's almost as if it created a bigger problem by restricting it in a time when it had the biggest opportunity of making the most profits. And by you restricting it to only a few people being able to legally profit off of it, it only created a bigger black market for everybody who wanted to profit off of it that wasn't in the requirements of legal, like a big pharma. Big pharma, of course, was able to profit off of it legally, but if you weren't a part of that industry, you were a criminal now. Now, after World War I, the American society began to become aware of the potential abuses of drugs. Gee, I wonder why, right? Gee, maybe because you were using morphine and heroin and cocaine to keep these men alive. I wonder what could have possibly happened after World War I. I don't know, withdrawals, addiction, who knows, substance abuse. Who would have thought, right? Anyway, so that's when we started seeing rise in drug abuses, alcoholism, cocaine addiction, heroin addiction, morphine addiction. We started seeing all these addictions come about. I have realized that prohibition was probably what made the black market what it is today. Because if you really think about it, people say that marijuana is a gateway drug. I don't agree with that. Marijuana is a drug, just like alcohol is a drug, just like cocaine, just like heroin. But marijuana, it's not a drug that can get you to want to do harder drugs, because the feelings of marijuana is more of like relaxing or like happy, or it's not, you don't hear somebody getting mad when they're high off of marijuana. Like you don't see like people getting angry or overly emotional, like and irrational. That's not something that happens when somebody is under the influence of marijuana. Versus other drugs such as cocaine, you do see people get angry or upset, So I think, my opinion, alcohol is the gateway to drugs, because alcohol makes you feel like you can do anything. It completely just takes away every barrier, every mental limit you put on yourself. It makes you feel confident. It makes you do things that you wouldn't have done if you were sober. So to me, my opinion, prohibition was what created the war on drugs. Because you try to control and completely restrict a substance that is the gateway to all other substances. Like they tried to close that door with lock and key, and by them doing that so abruptly, it just made everything more heightened and more intensified, and it made people want to do more drugs. It made people want to do more alcohol, because you suppressed the substance that is addictive And that only made the victim to the addiction wanted it even more. It's psychological. You suppress somebody from something that they weren't faded out. That behavior was not faded out in a way where if you were to take it away, they don't have a withdrawal, they don't have an intense reaction, versus they've been using it for forever, or they've been using it continuously, consistently, and then all of a sudden it's no longer there. It's going to want it even more. The desire to want it is going to be 10 times more potent. So to me, prohibition was an experiment on what could happen to the American experiment if we were to literally ban this drug that we know is the real gateway drug. But we're not going to say that. We're going to say marijuana is the gateway drug, not alcohol. That's why marijuana is still a Schedule I drug and illegal, and alcohol didn't last very long being banned. So, and then right after they legalized alcohol again, in 1937 they banned marijuana. And it's been like that ever since. So that just tells you something. And then World War II happens. And then after World War II, now we start seeing more of psychedelics becoming a thing. We got LSD, we had mushrooms, we had marijuana, so peyote, and even though heroin is not a psychedelic, it became even more popular after World War II. So war and regulation created a heavier market when it comes to these drugs. And of course, pharmaceutical companies are manufacturing these products, but they're not the only ones that are manufacturing these products. We have also other players like China, Latin America, Mexico, that are also producing these same products, except they're not using them for medical purposes, they're using them for recreational purposes, and the majority of the market is the illegal market, where these drugs are all going to be used for illegal purposes. Okay. So obviously there's big money in drugs, legal and illegal. There's big money in it. And when there's big money in drugs, there's a lot of destruction and grief and death, because there's so much power and so much success in selling these products, regardless of what it can do to a society. The money is so grand that these players don't care. And they don't care whose families are going to be destroyed, because at the end of the day, it's all about making money. That's just the reality, right? After World War II, you had LSD come about, mushrooms come about, marijuana was even more popular after World War II, heroin became very popular after World War II as well. Psychedelics became the new biggest thing, and then obviously during the Nixon time, we started the war on drugs, even though war on drugs happened way before that, but they started marketing it during the Nixon time, and then it was really pushed in the 1980s as well because of crack cocaine, and opioids become a really big thing after the 80s, and now opioids has been the biggest problem in the 21st century when it comes to the war on drugs. So how does this connect to the border, right? So the border has been open for a long time, and that's why we have drug abuse and drug addiction in this country. Obviously, big pharma doesn't help, but there is a sense of regulation when it comes to big pharma versus allowing other players like China and Mexico and just other Latin countries. They manufacture it and they work with Americans who smuggle it in ports of entry. So we have Americans who are smuggling these deadly products and killing innocent American lives. And we also have Mexican cartels doing the same thing. In the 1960s, fentanyl was created by a Belgian founder of the Janssen pharmaceutical company. So fentanyl is supposed to be a painkiller, pain management, just like opium, just like, opium is the main substance that was used for morphine and heroin and codeine, but now fentanyl is the new opium of the 21st century, and it's significantly stronger apparently than heroin.
Fentanyl is an opioid, and what that means is it's a painkiller. In its pharmaceutical form, when it's produced by pharmaceutical companies and approved by the FDA, it's used for acute and chronic pain. Unfortunately, when we're talking about fentanyl from an overdose perspective, we're mostly talking about illicit fentanyl. And this is fentanyl that is produced by drug cartels and used for money-making purposes, not for healthcare. As little as 2 milligrams can lead to death.
If 2 milligrams could kill someone, why would it be in these drugs? Like, why would a drug dealer who's trying to make money put it in drugs if it could kill their customer?
So unfortunately, that is all about business, right? So they want fentanyl is cheap to produce, and if you can put in a tiny amount of something and produce a big high, then you can make a lot more money.
So obviously, if the dealer has the strongest stuff on the streets, that's what these drug users are going to look for.
We are in the deadliest moment of the deadliest drug epidemic in American history. Originally, we were seeing fentanyl flown in from China. That's where a lot of the component chemicals are manufactured. But more recently, the fentanyl components are being sent to Mexico, where they're being manufactured there and driven across the border through border checkpoints. And those drugs are coming all across this country, including here to North Carolina, and they are absolutely devastating people's lives. We have to approach the supply, but we also have to approach demand, and that's drug addiction. And so I've been holding the drug companies accountable that created this crisis in the first place.
How did they do this? How are they to blame?
There were 3 waves of this opioid epidemic. The first wave from 2000, 2010, or 12 had to do with prescription pills. And the drug companies were aggressively promoting these pills to prescribers, asserting that they were effective at treating pain and they were not addictive. And it turns out that neither of those things are true. And so millions of Americans got hooked on these pills while these companies were making billions and billions of dollars. When the pills became less available, folks started transitioning to using heroin, buying it on the street because heroin was cheaper than the prescription pills. And now this third wave has to do with fentanyl, which is even cheaper than heroin. And that's what's killing people because it's incredibly potent. We're making them pay over $50 billion. North Carolina's share is going to be about $1.4 billion. It has to go to prevention, harm reduction, treatment, or recovery services.
I see families that are very intact, and then a kid gets on fentanyl and cocaine and heroin, and it ruins them, and it ruins the family. We got to remember, when we come up, there was marijuana. People were not addicted and dying over it. Then cocaine come out, and people were addicted to it, but they probably weren't dying over it. Then crack come out, was a whole lot more addictive, but it won't kill them instantly. Now you have heroin that is laced with fentanyl and opioids. It's killing people instantly.
You'd be hard-pressed to find a family in the United States that hasn't been at some level impacted when you're talking about the numbers that we're talking about. A little over 75% of drug overdoses in North Carolina involve fentanyl in some way. Unfortunately, in 2021, we lost the most North Carolinians we've ever lost to drug overdoses, and that was 4,041 individuals.
And that's just a little bit of what fentanyl has done to one state. And it's affected already thousands of people, that the main problem here, the main problem I saw with that video, and I see with a lot of other videos, and when I listen to hearings of, we have congressmen and congresswomen that are trying to fight this fentanyl issue. And all the victims always say the same thing. Oh, my kid was using another drug. And they didn't know that it was laced with fentanyl. And they died. So, fentanyl killed the person, for sure. That was the cause of death, was fentanyl. However, what got them to die off of fentanyl was using drugs, period. So the real question we need to be asking ourselves is, what is going on in the mental health of the American society, the American experiment, that has created this self-destructing, addictive personality of wanting to escape reality? That you don't want to feel grief, you don't want to struggle, you don't want to go through what it is to being a human being, so you escape by taking these drugs. And that's the part that this is a huge hole we have in American society right now, is this void, this emptiness, this lack of love within ourselves, that we think that coping with these drugs that we know are deadly. And it's been happening for years. Since the 19th century, I just gave you a little bit of history, a little bit of a timeline. Since the 19th century up to now, the 21st century, we've only gotten worse. Think about that. We've become aware that these drugs are bad for you. They are evil. They are demonic, if you think about it. They make people zombies. They make people inhumane. They don't care about themselves. They don't care about anything. They just want to leave reality. They want to be comfortably numb, like Pink Floyd says. And to me, that's the real issue. It's not that the border is open. That's part of it. That's part of the issue. The bigger issue is, if the American experiment wasn't so mentally hijacked, then the border being open wouldn't be as big of a problem as it is today, if we were to master self-management, self-control. Because these are things that we need. We need to learn how to control our urges, our desires. We need to learn what it means to feel in control of our emotions. Be in control of our stress levels. Your stress doesn't control you, you control your stress. Your pain doesn't control you, you control your pain. And this is one of those things that we have become so dependent on the pharmaceutical companies, and we become so compliant to the idea of, oh, I have a headache, let me just take this Advil, oh, I have a stomach ache, let me take, I don't know what drug you take for stomach aches. But it's this like, oh, let me just suppress this feeling I have right now. Versus, okay, why am I feeling like this? What caused me to feel like this? Let me retrace my steps. Let me take deep breaths. Let me release whatever it is I feel right now by drawing, by singing, by dancing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the American society has become so dependent on drugs instead of just expressing themselves. You know, if you're feeling some type of way, express it. Don't consume a substance you know is gonna harm you just because you don't want to feel whatever it is you're feeling. Like, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to feel, guys. You just have to channel it in a positive way. And I think that drugs is a way to channel in a self-destructive way. And because the drug epidemic that has really sped up because of COVID, because of the fentanyl, because of the open border, it has really sped up homelessness. It has really created a more drug-dependent society. We need to actually take a step back and really think, what is going on with our mental health in this country that has created such a self-destructive mentality? When it comes to drugs, it's a mental game. And if you follow me on MB Elevate, you know that I talk all about mindsets and how important it is to have a positive mindset. Because if you have a negative mindset, it is very easy to fall into consuming substances that are going to suppress whatever you are feeling at that time. When you have a weak mindset, you want to alleviate whatever pain you feel as quickly as possible. You have no intentions of actually being strong and overcoming that. Because in your mind, in that moment, you just want to suppress relief instead of overcome, endure. When you overcome something, when you endure something, your mind becomes stronger. When you suppress, when you avoid, when you depress, your mind becomes weaker. It's all a mental game, guys. And we have to beat it. We have to realize that if we want to have a better future for this country, because it is not looking good right now. It is looking really bad. Why are kids using pills? Why are kids using Xanax and Percocets and all these other things? Why is the youth seeking to suppress instead of to overcome? If we want to improve the future of our children, if we want to improve the future of this country, considering how bad it's gotten over the centuries. It's gotten good in some ways, but it's gotten really bad in other ways. And I think culture is very important in society, and our culture has been deteriorating over time because of drug abuse, because of mental weakness in this country. So the reality is, we need to strengthen our mind, we need to toughen up, we need to teach children to endure and to overcome, because that is what is going to help us become stronger and better human beings. That's what evolution is all about, is actually putting in the effort to become a better version of yourself, to become the person you want to be, to inspire others, to motivate others, to encourage others. That's what gets us growing as a society, as a nation, is having a purpose of positivity in ourselves. This side of the American culture, this drug abusive, self-inflicting, self-destructive mindset, is destroying the future of the country, only because we're not doing anything about it. We have to talk about it. We not talk about it in a sense of, oh, we need to crack down on the drug dealers because they're the problem. And no. That's not how you fix the problem. You're doing the same thing the pharmaceutical companies are. You're just suppressing the problem. You're putting one drug dealer away when there's 20, 30 Americans coming through the border with this stuff. That's not what we do to fix the problem. The source of the problem is mental health. That's what we need to be focusing on. What can we do to improve the mental health in this country? That's where we need to be talking about. What can improve mental health? I think talking about it. I think we need to be more open to talking about mental health. I think we need to be tougher on the youth, and they need to learn that life is not easy. Life is not a walk in the park. Life is tough. Get over it. Toughen up. Yeah, there's gonna be shitty times. So what? Move on. Overcome. Endure. Those are the characteristics we need to have to strengthen our society and to finally be able to actually go after this destructive mentality, is by playing offense, really, because they're playing defense. Everybody who's pro legalizing all drugs and pro open border and, oh my God, yeah, you know, the homelessness problem is not it's not a drug addiction problem. The homelessness problem is a housing problem, which is a lie, and I will talk about that in another video. So let's begin fighting back against this self-destructive, drug addictive mentality that is infecting the future of this country. We begin by talking about it. We begin by coming to the realization that we do have a drug problem in this country. Legal and illegal, it's the problem, the biggest problem in this country. And it's time we become aware of it, because how many more children, women, men have to die for us to come to that conclusion? We need to fight back. We need to teach our youth that mental strength, willpower, self-management, self-control is extremely important if we want to improve our lives and the future of this country. Thank you so much for watching me. I appreciate you guys. Much love. Share this with your friends and your family. It is important to become aware of drug addiction and what's been happening to this country, especially with what's going on with fentanyl. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys next time.